Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
So how are you doing today? We are here in the studio in Colorado, but before we jump into today's episode, can I ask you to like, follow, share the show with people that you think would benefit from hearing about creativity, invention, innovation leadership, all the things we talk about here on Killer Innovations as our core charter, our core mission is to share experiences and expertise with those that can take advantage of it. As I said last week's show, we are now in season 17. Yes, we have been doing this for 16 years now, hard to believe. And now we're early into season 17. We've got some great shows coming up. Today's topic is on tips when it comes to partnering with others. Many people believe innovation is a solo sport. You do it on your own, you just do it within your organization. And I can tell you that is a big fallacy. Now, you can do some innovation on your own. You can do some innovation within your organization, but at some point, you are going to need to partner. You're going to need to work with others who have different expertise, different access to technology, different access to resources than you do. You are going to have to partner. And how do you partner? And how do you do that in a smart way? Now, partnering for innovation can be scary. Do you trust the other organization? Will they steal your idea from you? Will they steal your intellectual properties, your patents? And do partnerships really work? Or, do people try them and none of them ever see the light of day? Now, I've done many successful innovation partnerships. Many. And I shared in today's episode so a few examples of ones that are probably the highest profile ones that were quite successful. But there's a long history of successful ones. But in today's show, I will show you what you need to do. And I will share with you the three tips, the three critical tips you need to keep in mind when developing a co-innovation partner and innovating with them. So with that, let's jump in today's show. Co-innovation is a common term we use in the innovation space. It is used to describe it when two organizations, typically two separate corporations, but it could be any organization, government agencies working together, NGOs working together, governments working together, profits, nonprofits, big, small. But it's when two organizations come together to innovate in a space of common interest. Now, there has been a lot of discussions about collaboration, and I'm not talking about just collaborating. Co-innovation has that objective of delivering a real innovation, a real product, a service, a new technology, some biopharma breakthrough, but there's an end result that's being worked together on. It's trying to achieve this. Now, the way that I think about it, if it's truly a co-innovation model, that there is a 50-50 contribution, whether that's real money, whether it's access to technologies, facilities, research labs, people, whatever the contribution is, if it's truly a co-innovation project, it is a joint effort. It is jointly coming together. Now, here's some examples, and I'm going to talk about an example that I know because this is a co-innovation project that fell in my organization. So, as you probably know, if you've been listening to this show for any amount of time, I was previously the CTO at Hewlett Packard. I retired from HP at the end of 2011. But during my tenure, when I formed and launched the Innovation Program Office at HP, co-innovation played an important role for us. One was because the accelerating cost to innovate, the amount of dollars it took over an extended period of time, in many cases became a barrier. It limited your innovation pipeline. It limits the ability to get as much resources in a diverse approach to drive innovations going forward. So, in this case, the co-innovation partner was Corning. So you may know Corning from a variety of different areas: fiber optic cables, Gorilla Glass that's on the front of your phones. It's on the front of many TVs now. That is all from Corning. Now, the co-innovation project that we did with HP and Corning was around Gorilla Glass. Up to that point, Gorilla Glass was used primarily just on very small pieces of glass. We worked with Corning to use Gorilla Glass and improve out its use in a variety of different products and services, including being the first ones to use Gorilla Glass into laptops. Could it satisfy the government requirements? And the government has a requirement of a 6-foot drop test. So you take a laptop, you turn it on its sharp edge, and drop it from 6 feet. And it has to be able to survive that fall multiple times in order to meet certain government regs. And so if you put glass on the front of that, remember you already have an LCD display. Now you put Gorilla Glass, you're kind of wondering if that's the issue, or it's going to be an issue. We actually took the Gorilla Glass to an extreme. We built a laptop case out of Gorilla Glass. We built 1,000 laptops using Gorilla Glass as the entire case for the laptop. If you can find one of those, good for you. They're very, very rare, but we built 1,000 of them to prove out the use of glass as a design element, as a material. Could it withstand the kinds of shocks and drops and usage and scratching and touching and all the things you think about in a physical product? And so that was one effort. Now that kind of then began down a path of us doing multiple co-innovation projects with Corning. The next one we did, and it was a real breakthrough, and now you see it as a pretty common offering, and that is literally bending a display. When you get really, really wide displays, you run into an ergonomic challenge. Ergonomics says that the distance from your eye to the glass, to the display you're looking at, should be a consistent distance. Otherwise, your eyes, and if you happen to wear glasses like I do, you run into this problem of constantly needing to change the focal length in order to read text or view images or do work. And the problem is we wanted to get to bigger displays, but we could not satisfy the ergonomic requirement. So we went with Corning, and we actually did a project where we physically took really, really wide LCD displays and literally built a frame and bent them to figure out how far could you bend them before they would break, before you would cause internal damage, before you would cause any kind of issues. That research, that co-innovation work between HP and Corning led to the curved displays, which is now pretty common. Anything over a 35-inch display now is curved. And that is to make sure that you don't suffer eye strain when you use those kinds of displays. So those are two examples of a co-innovation project. And I'm going to go through and give you a little bit more insight about each one of those in the context of what is it I learned as the senior executive on the hook for these co-innovation projects. So I'm giving you lessons learned from my perspective as being the most senior executive with responsibility for these projects, which means I was on the line to make sure that these co-innovation projects actually came to fruition. But again, why is co-innovation so important? Why is it so important is that innovation is accelerating in cost. It's the pace of innovation is accelerating, and along with that, the cost to innovate is accelerating. And You just have to be willing to share. There's things that you don't know. You need to find those partners who can bring something to the table that you cannot bring to the table. And so those two elements is what really prompted us to go big in the co-innovation space. Now, so what I'm going to share with you are the 3 tips. Here you are getting the benefit of me having done this, I don't know, for the last 15 years of co-innovation. Things to think about as you are preparing and actually doing and executing on co-innovation work. Here are the 3 important tips that you need to keep in mind. So tip number 1. Tip number 1 is choose a partner with strong culture alignment. You're going to work very, very closely with this organization. You are going to work with their leaders. Your teams are going to work together. You want to find an organization that has cultural alignment. Now, a number of you are saying, well, no, it's about technology. Do they have... No, trust me. You need to make sure that your co-innovation partner has a culture alignment. And what do I mean by culture alignment? Such as people. How do they hire? How do they treat their people? How do they manage? How do they oversee their staff? How do they support their teams? What kind of expectations do they put on their teams? How much autonomy do they give their team? All the things around people. So think about that. If you grant a lot of autonomy and they're a micromanaging organization, you are going to have some major friction. And I had experience with that. Not with Corning, but with other attempts at my early days of co-innovation. You want to make sure this cultural alignment is well understood and that it aligns with your organization. So beyond people, it's also customer. How do they think about customers? Customer segments. How do they sell their customers? What's their selling style? At HP's selling style is very relaxed. It's not a high-pressure sales. It's not getting in there and doing the big arm twist. It's not beating up the customer until they finally yell give and sign the contract. That was not HP's, and it is not even today HP's selling approach. A lot of organizations are like that. So the understanding and the relationship with the customers, if you're doing a co-innovation, you even have to think about how do each organization treat customers? How are you going to introduce this co-innovation and result to customers? And are you willing to align those kinds of activities? The third is mission and objective. What is the mission objective of the organization? If one organization is all about the numbers and another organization is about, improving people's day-to-day lives, those are 2 different objectives. You want to make sure that you have some form of alignment. So it's around people, customer, and that mission objective. All of that rolling up into tip number 1, which is choose a partner with strong culture alignment with you and your organization. Because if you don't have that, then all bets are off on your ability to be successful. So, tip number 2, carefully define the area of focus. Yeah, it might be a nice company. You might have a peer on that side that and you're like, hey, let's go do something. Now, what is this area of focus? And the way I think about this is what I call a strong overlap of interest. So think of it as a Venn diagram. You got one part of the Venn diagram, that's your area of focus for your entire business, and what you're really focusing on from the standpoint of your organization to achieve the success that your organization is trying to achieve. Your partner has an area of focus. What is it they do? What is it they do really well? What is their area of focus to achieve success? What you're looking for is that Venn diagram. Where do those 2 spheres overlap? And it's where that overlap occurs that is the area of focus. Not that, you've got this big hot area and you're trying to convince somebody to come over to that area and invest or partner with you. That's not co-innovation. You have to both have very, very strong, committed interest into that area. That is absolutely key. The other is each organization has to have a key contribution to make, and it can't be just dollars. It's got to be, if you got something that's in your focus area, you've built up capabilities and resources and expertise and intellectual properties and whatever, and your partner organization has built it up. Where's that contribution? What are the two organizations bringing together to create a breakthrough? And then the third part of this, tip number 2, that is absolutely the most important and one that I cannot underestimate, and that is mutual dependency. You must have mutual dependency. You must find an area of focus where neither one of you can go do it on your own, where you need each other to achieve this success. If one of you can just go off and do it on your own, then it's really not a co-innovation project. It's basically you're trying to get the other person to fund your NRE, non-reoccurring engineering costs. You're trying to get them to fund your R&D effectively. That's not co-innovation. You want to create mutual dependency such that neither one of the parties can walk away because they can't do it on their own. The two organizations coming together is absolutely critical. Absolutely, it is. If there is not a mutual dependency, I will walk away from that project. If mutual dependency is missing, where one or either organization can just go off and do it on their own, that is not co-innovation. So this is, like I said, if I'm being presented with a co-innovation project and there's no mutual dependency, I will walk away because I've seen that fail. I've had it fail and blow up in my face so many times. I will walk away. So again, tip number 2, carefully define this area of focus, this area that you are going to co-innovate in. And tip number 3, which is secure proper sponsorship and support. In the early days of co-innovation, people within an organization, two, directors of engineering or VPs or even CTOs will come together and try to create some form of co-innovation work. And the problem is you can't bring the entire resources of the organization. You have to try to get as high in the organization as possible. Key here is you're trying to create a partnership, a true partnership. And this partnership has to be built on trust. This isn't just a pass some emails and sign a legal agreement and off you're running. It's trust. You have to build these relationships. You have to build the trust, the fact that you trust the person on the other side of the table. Now, in the case of the HP and Corning co-innovation project, I was the executive sponsor as the most senior executive at HP, and Wendell Weeks, the chairman and CEO of Corning, was the sponsor at Corning. So Wendell and I were the two executive sponsors of the co-innovation work. Now I can tell you, I've been gone from, HP for coming up on a decade here now. And I can tell you that even to this day, Wendell and I talk on a regular basis. We have built not only the co-innovation work, which established the relationship, established that level of trust, but I can honestly say we have become friends and we reach out to each other if we need help, or we respond when the other one asks for help or asks for advice. We're there. That level of trust and that level of relationship got built off of these co-innovation project work. So you want a partnership of trust. You need to be able to trust implicitly the person on the other side of the table. And it needs to be a senior executive. Again, it can't be a director level. They can be friends, they can do good work, but these co-innovation projects can be messy, right? You think you know what you're going in to do, but until you get in there and do it, you're not quite sure where this is going to head. And you got to be able to give enough air cover to the teams to where they can adjust the plan as needed as things change. Now, as part of this proper sponsorship and support, talking about, air cover, the one thing that constantly comes up in co-innovation is around intellectual property and all the lawyers and legal issues and trying to document this agreement. Here's my advice on that. Keep the IP and the legal issues simple. Let's just take intellectual property. If you're going to co-innovate, you're going to come up with some patents, possibly, as a result of this co-innovation effort. And there's a couple ways you can deal with it. You can say, we're going to jointly own all of the patents. Meaning both organizations will equally own all of the patents. Good. I did a co-innovation project between HP and AMD where we jointly own the patents. Let me tell you, those patents that are jointly owned between HP and AMD were the biggest pains in the butt you could ever think of. It was beyond painful and expensive. What happens when you get later in life in the patents and the patent maintenance fees get really expensive? How do you deal with that? So you can do that if you want. That's fine. Just go in eyes wide open. It is hard, it is painful, and it is expensive. The way I prefer to do it is what we would call a split license. And what we mean was at the end of the project, the two sponsoring execs go out for dinner. There's a list of all the patent applications that are being filed. At the dinner, you take a coin, you flip it. Whoever wins the flip gets to name the first patent that they want to have, right? So they say, okay, I want patent number 7 on the stack. Okay, great. Then the other person gets to pick one. I want patent number 9. Well, I want patent number 2, number 3. You go back and forth until it's 50-50. Everybody technically owns half the patents. Then what you do is you cross-license all of the other patents. So in effect, you walk away with the ability to operate, with the ability to do what you need with the patents, because you own half of the patents and you have an unrestricted license to the other half of the patents. And therefore, then you control your own destiny. You have half the patents. If you've got a great partnership, then, you don't run into this issue of, trying to block each other in the use of these intellectual properties. So that is the approach that I use. And in fact, if you're interested, let me know. I may just do a whole show on how to really do what I call this split license approach to intellectual properties when two entities create IP that is jointly developed. So in summary, I've done more than a dozen of successful co-innovations. I've had a lot more that never turned into anything, but I've had about a dozen that have proven to be quite successful. And they had major impacts. Products that you are using today are the result of co-innovation projects that I did at HP. I'm 90% sure that you've got at least one product, and it doesn't need to be an HP product, because in some cases, the other party created intellectual property that they put into their products and offerings. And I can say today, the odds are you've got a product today that's a result of one of these dozen co-innovation projects. So, and they have a great opportunity to accelerate your innovation, build out your innovation pipeline. So keep the 3 tips in mind. Number 1, culture. Make sure you got a culture match. Number 2, a clearly defined area of focus. And number 3, proper sponsorship. Now, one subtle thing around all of this, a lot of people ask me, is how long does it take from the time you say, hey, let's go do a co-innovation, until you actually get the first project defined, right? Now, I'm going to give you a time frame. Most people hear it, they will freak out. But I'm telling you, multiple times, this has been proven out. The time you say, hey, HP, Corning, let's do a co-innovation agreement, and let's go off and start investigating opportunities to co-innovate. From the time that is said until you've got the first project defined and you are in flight with that first project, it's a year. It's a year just building relationship, defining the areas of focus, getting everything in place, building the relationships, building that trust. It is a year. You have to be patient. It takes that kind of time. So here's some next steps that I would pass on to you. Keep your eyes open. You never know when a co-innovation opportunity may present itself. You may be reading an article about some invention at a university, and that might be an interesting co-innovation, or a federal research lab. In fact, in my current organization, we just did some work with NREL as part of the Department of Energy. Thought it was an interesting project. Let's see if there's some overlap here. Let's have a discussion. And I think we're now coming up on year 3 on that effort. Keep your eyes open. You never know where co-innovation projects will pop up. Be patient. Be patient. Don't think you're going to go out and in 30 days hurry up, or you're in a jam. You got to hurry up and come up with an innovation. So you think co-innovation is going to be, the magic solution. Don't. Co-innovation is long. It is hard, right? It should not be the thing that saves a failing innovation effort. You need to think about it as just a way to build out a robust pipeline, not as the thing that's going to save a failed effort around your innovation programs. And don't let fear hold you back. I've given you some warnings. I've given you some kind of things to be careful of. Don't let those be the things that hold you back, that are going to oh my gosh, I can't, this thing's going to take a year. I don't have a year. You got to start, right? Start now, because year 2, year 3, year 4, and the objective of a co-innovation project isn't to do one project. It's to build a relationship with a co-innovation partner where there will be multiple ongoing. Once you get the engine kind of running, then they just come out as just a way to augment your internal innovation pipeline. And that allows you to build up the robust pipeline with other people's resources, with other people's contributions in areas of overlapping focus. So keep that in mind. So again, 3 tips: culture, defined areas of focus, and proper sponsorship. You put all 3 of those in place, and you can have a successful co-innovation program inside of your organization. So, are you ready now to jump into a co-innovation partnership? Now, again, I will acknowledge it can be scary, particularly in the first co-innovation partnership work that you are trying to do. It can be scary. Here's my advice: start small. Find something you can do where it's less innovation risk and more about building the relationship. Get an early win on the scoreboard. Find an area where the two can come together and be successful early. But don't miss out on expanding the robustness of your innovation funnel. Your innovation funnel, your innovation pipeline is absolutely critical. And in any innovation effort within an organization, that pipeline will eventually start to run dry. It'll start to run out. It's hard to keep the level of internal innovations going because you've got people working on projects, and they working on projects while developing new ideas. It becomes a little bit of a challenge. Co-innovation is a way to expand your innovation funnel and your innovation pipeline. So do not ignore it. It can become a key weapon in your arsenal to keep your innovation funnel fresh and full of new ideas. So thanks for joining us today. I know it's time out of your busy schedule to listen and give us feedback. We'd love to hear from you. You can drop me an email or you can post comments over at killerinnovations.com. Can you help me pay it forward? The reason I started this podcast back in 2005 was to pay back an early mentor. That early mentor, Bob Davis, put a lot of time into my career, gave me some phenomenal experiences, which I can honestly say laid the foundation for the career success that I had. When I went back to Bob and asked how I paid it back, he laughs because you can't pay me back. You have to pay it forward. You have to take the knowledge and what you've learned and share it with others. And that was the prompting to start the podcast back in 2005. And now we've been doing it 16 years, starting season 17. But can I ask your help in helping me meet the obligation that I made to my mentor to pay it forward? And the way you can do that is tell others about the show. Help me share my expertise, my knowledge, my background, my lessons learned, my failings, where I landed flat on my, hopefully you can learn from all this. And can you help me pay it forward by sharing with others? I have one quick question, serious question, looking for your feedback on this, and that is we are looking to expand how we engage with you. So we have all the social media places as you can think of. We've got the Innovators community, we've got the show, we've got email, those types of things. We're trying to find a forum that allows us to have a higher level of engagement, such as we periodically will stream to Twitch. So if you are a Twitch user, you can follow me on Twitch. And then when I go live, you can see behind the scenes as we produce the show. We're also looking at Clubhouse. I'm on Clubhouse. So if you're on Clubhouse, let me know. We can connect and follow each other. I'm also looking, do we set up a group on Signal so that we can just do a text-based level of engagement, can share with you some of the thoughts, etc. Or if there's other platforms that you think would be appropriate. But we want to find a way, rather than just being a one-way push, to get more engagement, get more of the back and forth. You have expertise to share that the community can benefit from. So creating a platform that allows a level of engagement between us. So love to hear it. You can drop me an email, phil@killerinnovations.com, or you can post a comment, or you can post a comment over on the Innovators community. So it's theinnovators.community, and you can post a comment. That's the free community, no charge, but it's made up of innovators from big chief innovation officers for multinationals down to college kids and everybody in between. So you can hop over there and post suggestions on the ways to increase or drive a level of engagement. So let us know. Love to hear your ideas. But again, we're looking for ways to increase the level of engagement. Let me know. And with that, thanks for taking the time out of your schedule today. And we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.